Welcome back, everybody, to the Fundamentalists podcast. That just happened so quick. My name is Elliott
You
Morgan,
didn't have to
and
start just because I hit
I know
record. That
why am I
wasn't a
start?
like
Why are we
you were
start?
like as soon
Like
as
I'm
I hit
so
record, it was like you went into interview mode.
oh God. Like I gotcha. Yeah, geez, it's been a second, guys. Well, this is the third season, fourth season, fifth season. What season are we on of this
Oh,
podcast?
I have no idea.
Yeah, we just say seasons anytime we
Yeah.
take some time off.
Anytime
It's
we
all
take a
right.
break, I think we're in season 20. Is that right?
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of seasons. It's a very tried and true podcast. But we're back, folks. You thought we were gone, and we've seen your tweets. And thank you so much for saying, "Where are you?" We've been all over the place, and we have a lot to catch up on with you. We have some announcements that you might be interested in. One of them is incredibly exciting, and Pete and I were just chatting about it privately. Elliott Morgan, will be joining Peter Rollins in person in Northern Ireland, specifically Belfast, next month, the beginning of June. You can check out more at peterrollins.com, but it's for his Wake Festival. And I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be premiering new stand-up. So maybe
Yes.
that's why I'm a little frazzled, but I'm very excited about it. Pete, what do you think? How do you think that's going to go?
Well, first of all, by the way, your parents were,
Mm-hmm.
if anyone's watching this video, were on a cruise ship just behind me. So they have been to Belfast before, uh,
Yeah,
although they never got off the boat.
never got off the
They
boat,
never got off
and
the boat.
they knew you were there,
Yeah,
and so
I could see the ship. I think it was COVID. Was that COVID? And they weren't
it
allowed to
was
get off
COVID.
that. So they got to Ireland before you. They got to Belfast before you.
Yep, they did the most cruise ship cruiser thing you can do as parents, and they took an international cruise and immediately got. I think my dad was the one who got it, and my mom was, stuck around with him and didn't go
Uh,
out. But yeah, they were so close. So you were close to them, and my mom was like, "Man, I would love to have Pete show me around," but it
you
wasn't in the
you can actually
cards.
almost see there's a cruise ship out there. Actually, it sits there in dock, but you can't quite see it, I don't think. But
What
yeah,
what's the cruise line?
I don't know actually.
I could tell you. Does it have a tail on it? Carnival?
Do you know this kind of stuff?
Yeah. Does it have a like red, white, and blue whale tail?
It's got a blue and white hull,
It
like
might be
a
Norwegian.
wow. Look, look at you from Florida, knowing
Yeah.
all of your cruise ships.
Yeah, Royal Caribbean. What are we looking at? Celebrity.
Yeah, well,
Anyway, you
here,
were also,
yeah.
yes,
Oh, go
after
ahead.
you. We're finding our groove.
Yes, we're finding
You
it.
were also out here in Los Angeles, and so we have a topic to talk about here, but it's not as
Yes.
fun as the wake topic
Oh yeah. So
that
on wake
happens in the
before we
future.
get to that, yeah, because that's a depressing topic we've got for today. So what do I think is going to happen at wake? I'm very excited because you're going to do some stand up and we're going to do a live fundamentalist podcast. So those
Yes,
are two things. Also, we're going to do a secret philosophical society with our friend Barry Taylor on the theme of comedy. And there'll be there'll be a lecturer, a friend, Alfie Bowen, who's written on comedy, and Teresa Livingston, who's a comedian musician. So
cool.
there's a few little cool things that Elliot and I will be doing together. And there's lots of other things going on at the festival. If anyone's interested, check it out. Go on to my website. You'll find out more, but it's called Wake. And it'll be exciting. This is like us doing stuff on tour almost.
I
That's
know.
kind of cool.
Multiple things of varying levels of intensity, and it gives me a chance to like go perform and get out and put myself out there a little bit, which is very nice. So thank you for having me. I'm very excited about it, Pete.
But you're not going to get to see much of Northern Ireland. That's the only thing. You'll see a lot of Belfast, but
Even better.
yeah, even probably even better. Absolutely. So
Now,
here, what is the topic then?
well, Pete, I'll be honest with you. I'm not saying you caused it, but my wife's and my dog, I would say my dog as well, Goose, sadly passed away. She was doing a lot better before you came to Los Angeles. No, it turns out I lost a good buddy of mine. Goose, for those who don't know, has been my wife's dog since she was a puppy. She was very much rescued under very extreme circumstances. And Goose was always, we've talked about it, a reactive dog, maybe a little bit complicated, maybe a little bit hard to connect with sometimes. But boy, did I over the years between COVID and then Grace going through cancer and the chemo and all that. So Goose and I became very, very close, especially during that time. But sadly, we said goodbye to her, I guess now like a week and a half ago. Um, and she went very peacefully and it was very sad. But the doctor was under the suspicion that she very likely, due to all of her tests coming back negative, and she was still getting sicker and sicker and sicker, that there was a good chance she had GI cancer or gastrointestinal cancer, which is a cancer of the intestines, basically. And it wasn't a good prognosis by any stretch of the imagination. And it seemed, dude, like Goose was in like the last week, I don't know if people say this happens, and I think it's true. Like she knew, like she was almost telling us, like, okay, it's time for me to go. And it's been very sad and very heartbreaking. And Grace has been struggling with it, but taking it day by day. And yeah, missed the little thing. And now the house is completely silent, and now it's like a different world because it's like the first time my wife and I have ever been just me and her, basically. Like we've probably spent a handful of nights in the house without the little monster roaming around, and now it's like you wake up and you're like, oh, we don't have to give her medicine, we don't, it's like a weird silence and vacuum left behind by this little furry creature that I love very much. And so we thought that would be a nice topic. Was that a long enough diatribe or should I keep talking?
That was good. That was good. Something that Goose did interestingly was brought out a very neurotic side of you. I remember anytime I would come around, because I never saw the crazy side of Goose, right? I never
Yeah.
saw that reactive side of Goose. So I would come into the house and you would immediately be, Pete, like put your hands in your pockets, uh, don't make any sudden movements, don't look the dog in the eye,
Nope.
just walk slowly to the outside of the house.
Yeah.
And I always kind of thought, are you just lying? Is this true? Is this dog as mad as
Yeah.
you would make out? But it would definitely brought out you got very nervous when someone was in the house
Yeah.
with Goose. Had you
Yeah.
seen things? Has
Have I seen
Goose
things?
yeah, has Goose attacked? Yeah, I
Goose
think
can
Grace
see
has seen that.
red. Yeah. What's that?
Grace has seen Goose attack people, is that right?
Grace has seen her attack people, and I've seen her try to kill anyone who approaches. And then anyone on walks, she'll just lunge after like people with baby strollers, which is always pleasant. Or she would
Yeah.
just didn't like other humans. And then but she did like you and you were great around her, but it was definitely like you were like the only one, like no one else got like Goose time, basically. And that
Yeah.
was only when Grace was out of the house. So then it was like extra pressure for me because I'm like, if Goose bites Pete, oh, then I'm never gonna be able to have Pete over again. I'm gonna have to take Pete to the hospital. Grace is gonna be upset. So yeah, it was definitely a neurotic
Yeah.
experience every time.
'Cause I think maybe we've talked about this in the podcast, but a friend of mine, Sochi, if you know Sochi, her dog bit me a few years ago. I love dogs. I'm always in no fear of them, even after being bit. But I got like 15 stitches across my
Yeah.
face. But it was totally fine. And they didn't put the dog down. It was fine because the dog was kept safely after that. But until it bit their other dog, and then they put it down. So they didn't put it down because it bit me.
Mm-mm.
Put it down when it bit the other dog.
Yeah, the one they
But
care about. Yeah.
yeah. So I wouldn't have minded if Goose had bitten me. I would have been fine with that.
I know you would have. It
Yeah.
was she did do well. It was just like she was a fear-based dog who had so much nervous energy. And it was like and then in her older age, her hearing started to go. So it was like she would look at everyone, including me, like, where did you come from all the time? And it was cute, but also a little bit of a liability. So
It
but
took
it
you
is
a long
crazy.
time to develop a friendship with that dog. I mean, I think for the first couple of years, it was, let's say,
You could
fraught.
say. See, Pete, I don't know if you know this. the pets can symbolize a lot for people,
Hmm.
and they also can symbolize a lot for people whose they owners they don't even belong to. And so she symbolized a bunch for me. She symbolized a bunch for Grace. And so she also was like there was no activity that we ever did was not based first in where's Goose going to be, where's she going to stay, is she going to be okay for this long in boarding, like does she have all of her medicine, is she health wise, does she have an ear infection right now. So much of our ecosystem was about revolving around this like animal all the time.
Mm.
Very like it was like a way of life. And then one day we woke up and we were like, oh, this is different now. So yeah, it's like still an adjustment period.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about because we chatted, we texted back and forth about this when Goose was dying. That there are objects in our lives and pets can do this as well. That allow us to um, protect us from certain affects, certain emotional feelings. So, for example, two people can break up, and the person doesn't feel the pain of the breakup. They know that the breakups happened, of course, but they don't necessarily feel the pain. And then the dog dies 3 years later, and not only are they mourning the death of the dog, somehow they also suddenly start mourning the loss of the relationship. That the animal was what's called a fetish object, an object that kind of like a transitional object, like a security blanket that the
Mm-hmm.
child knows they're in a very confusing world. The child is surrounded by enigmatic signifiers, that desires of these adults. They don't understand the world, and trauma is very closely related to the question of what does the other want. So the child is surrounded by this unknown world, this world of demands, and as long as they have the security blanket, they are protected from the emotional weight of that insight. But you take the security blanket away, and then suddenly you don't get any new information about the world, but suddenly the affect, the emotional connection, uh, is you suddenly feel that. And I do see that a lot with pets. It's interesting because they're so easy to project onto because they are, they don't speak. They're kind of like, they are a little bit like a screen upon which you can project lots of things on, and they carry a lot of stuff. And because that dog Goose has been with Grace for all of Goose's life, I'm guessing, especially for her, but also for you, um, there's probably some stuff that was held.
You
Uh,
could say,
yeah.
um, yeah, totally, because there's an article that came out a couple days before she passed away, where in the Atlantic about why we mourn pets so much more than we mourn um, like humans. Like sometimes people will literally cry more over the loss of a pet than the loss of someone in their family, and it's not because they don't love the human more, but it is, they talk in the article about like because you are with a pet throughout their entire life, it's just like a different experience, and then you're there with you the whole time, and you project onto them and all that stuff. So it's a very like it's set up for it to be a very painful ending to like the relationship. But in Grace's case specifically, it was like Goose, and then she immediately blew up on the internet. And so then she was in this whirlwind professional world, but still anchored by the dog. Then various, 20s, you're in relationships still with the dog. The dog's the common denominator and mainstay. And then COVID happens and dog's still there with you the entire time. Then she goes through cancer and chemo. And so she's just at home and in bed the whole time. Dog's still there the whole time. So it's like this dog for Grace, especially, is just like that, I think, on steroids. Like there's so much contained in that
Yeah.
dog
Yeah.
as a transitional object and as a gosh darn cutie.
Hmm.
I don't know if Lacan ever talked about that, but sometimes their dumb little faces don't help.
Yeah. I wonder, I don't know if there's anything to this, but like there's a sense in which you know, animals are undivided in in the way that humans are. So if you think of the fall in theological terms, but the the birth into subjectivity, into self-division, and all of that, there's something very prelapsarian about pets, about something very, um, they just seem innocent, a kind of
Yeah.
a form of innocence. And so when you watch a movie, and you know, people talk about this all the time, but it's because it's true. You know, there's so many stand-up bits about it, but you do watch people die in a war film, and you feel something. But it's when the dog dies or the
Yeah.
horse dies that there's something that it clicks with us. And there, as I say, there is this sense of innocence, and the word innocence there, and it's again deeper meaning of like pre-division, you know,
Yeah.
pre-fall into subjectivity. Um, so yeah, I don't know what to make of that, except I guess again, it's like it's very easy for us to project a lot of things into the that type of animal.
Participation mystique. You know that term?
I don't know, but I
Like
like it.
the, I
What is
think
it?
Jung's way of describing the like state of the baby, or the state of the before pre-subjectivity, that kind of
Uh,
existing in a participation mystique, like at one with everything and not yet divided.
yes.
Um, but yeah, that's a fun one. It's a fun word anyway. Yeah, because the thing too with Goose is she her all like her being a complicated dog was also part of it too.
Mm.
Like my like getting close to her, like being like we are buds, like I love this dog, we get each other now and she gets me and we are friends. And it took like Grace leaving town a few times before I was like, okay, we're chill, we're good. um and time. But that difficulty made it seem cooler. I was like, oh, like this is walking her was became, even though sometimes you have to walk the other direction because you know there's like a skateboarder or something coming. It was still like this is a cool dog. This is a unique dog that isn't like all of those other kind of just like you know I'm a dumb idiot dog. Like this dog was
Yeah.
like has issues basically. And so there was a sense of like you're cute and I want to fix you. But it also that also led to tension in the house of like Grace wants to handle the dog this way, I want to handle the dog this way. And meanwhile Goose has no, she just doesn't care, she's being herself the whole time, she does no shame about who she is, she's living her truth, living her life. And
Well, to
until the
what
very end.
extent do you think, you know, to what extent do you think that an animal like a pet, like especially dogs, because they're so in tune with us because of the kind of history of our evolution, that they take on some of the uh emotions of of their owners.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah, to
Mm-hmm.
what extent does Goose, yes, in some behavioral aspects, reflecting you and reflecting Grace?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No comment, but yeah.
A
I
violent,
don't know, I don't know
aggressive,
what you're talking
messed up,
about.
nervous dog that could
Yeah,
blow up in a second.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
And the no, I had nothing, I have no comment on that. I have no idea what you're even talking about and I can't speak to it, so
Yes.
yeah. But it
Also,
is, that was 100% what it was. And not just in broad strokes, like little moments, especially like during the chemo, during that whole process, prior and then afterward. Prior, she was getting ear infections and like stomach aches and having to go to the vet almost like once every couple months basically, and she would have to get a new round of medicine. The moment Grace started doing the cancer treatment, Goose never was scratching at her ears. She never was like having up, she had perfectly formed poop the whole time. She was like the healthiest dog in the world for like 7 months. And so she
wow.
went like constantly going to the vet, a full gap of her just being like, I'm fine, don't even worry about it. I'm having a fun time. I'm jumping up everywhere. I can, you know, walk up and down the driveway and I'm doing fine. And as soon as it was like Grace was feeling better, then all of a sudden Goose was like, okay, I'm going to get sick again. And I'm going to get sick again and again and again until, we're like, what is going on with this thing?
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Wow. Yeah. Um, that's interesting. Yeah, I wonder as well then, well, yeah, okay, I'm kind of trying to think about one of the reasons why we get pets. There's lots of reasons why people get pets or have kids or do anything, right? But one of the things is how we cannot face life without fetish objects, without objects that help protect us from the emotional weight of our environment. So, again, people have rituals. Somebody might, I knew someone who they lost their child and they kept the room exactly as it was. And they did that for a number of years. And that act of keeping the room as it was, they mourned and they were in such deep suffering. But also, that room being kept as it was uh, kept something at bay in terms of the emotional weight. But then when they gradually took it apart, there was a wave of emotion happened. But the reason why we needed that, and they needed that transitional object, is because life is too painful when you lose people, when you go through breakups, when you learn about illness. Like, life has so much difficulty, and to be human is to require, for most of us, some sort of security blanket, some sort of way to protect ourselves from the tsunami of the difficulty of life, so that we can continue to function.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. On a much, much smaller scale, nothing like that. But when we came back, horrible experience, by the way, like peaceful, like very beautiful. But in terms of how incredibly painful and sad it was, I've never been on because I spent years working in a veterinary hospital and I've done many, many euthanasias on the other side. And they're always sad and they're always mostly very beautiful as well. But being on the side of the one who's with the dog is like heart wrenching. But then on the way home, it was like we're both just like crying or whatever. And then we were like, I was like, oh no. I was like driving really slow because I was like, I know when we get there, all of her beds, all of her like water, water and food dishes, and then it's this really big, like, call it her apartment by the bed in the bedroom. And I was like, I'm gonna go in there. I was like, you rest if you want. I'm just gonna start clearing stuff out. And Grace was like, I'm gonna help you too. And so we just immediately started clearing everything out of the house, and it was a lot. It was very cathartic, and I'll start crying if I talk about it too much. But I had to stop once we we got to her bed in the bedroom, and I was like, I can't. I was like, I can't do that today. And Grace was like, I get it. And then we waited a few days, and Grace was like, she was like, can I think it's time we kind of get that bed out of there. And so I waited for her to go to Target, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try to get this done real quick so that she can't see me doing it, so she doesn't get like triggered or upset. And that didn't work because I'm not exactly the handiest man in the world, but I'm like unscrewing this whole like giant, thing, and almost get it done. And she comes in right at the end, and then we both start crying again because I was like, sorry, I'm trying to like get it out so you don't see it. And it's just we finally did, but it's like that. It's it like hits you, that like grief thing, and then you're like, okay, I'm okay right now, like this will be fine. But holding the thing and being like, it's crazy. Like
Yeah.
these little animals just like they live in your heart, and then like it'll pop up that like I'll go into the garage to exercise, and I'm used to just like looking at Goose and going like jokingly, like I don't really want to go exercise. And then she kind of stares at me blankly. And so the other day I like looked over to be like, I don't want to do this. And she wasn't there. And I was like, and then last night I went and I was grilling, and I was like, where she's supposed to be beside me wanting a little piece of meat. So she's not here. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
always
all
liked your
cliche
Instagram.
stuff, but
Oh,
when
yeah,
it hits you,
yeah.
it's yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, I always liked your Instagram posts where you and Goose were sitting and you'd be chatting away to Goose
Yeah.
while Goose had this absolutely blank stare, just looking.
I know. I
Yeah.
was like, oh man, I wish I'd gotten a couple more of those before time was up. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
what can you do? But it's a different world now. And I know it is one of those things where if you don't have kids, it is the most like painful thing. But if you do have kids, people with kids are like, it's, that's a different kind of thing. But at our age with no kids and Grace having had Goose for as long as it was, it's a very, very difficult time.
Yeah. I remember when I was young, I had a dog called Scratch, and
It's a
Scratch
fun name.
was a little, Jack Russell, who
Nice.
strangely, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this or if you as a veterinarian at one stage have experienced this, but it would constantly, he would sit too close to the fire until he was burning, until you like literally smelt the burning of his flesh. It was quite
Nice.
impressive. Like I don't know how. I mean, obviously there was
Whoa.
something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the day that he died, they he probably was put down. I didn't know. I came back,
Yeah.
but my brother had that day bought. I thought my parents bought him it, but my brother that day had bought something called. Have you ever heard of a Vectrex?
Mm-mm.
Vectrex is a games console. And I was
Mm.
so attached to that dog, Scratch, and I was very upset when Scratch died. But I was a little bit consoled by the Vectrex, which strangely, for some reason, and maybe psychologically, it's because of Goose, because I came home and I was thinking about this games console, and because we live in the age of the internet now, I've done a deep dive and been reading and watching videos all about this games console. So somehow I think I put all of my emotional pain about Scratch
Yeah.
into the Vectrex.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Grace has been processing her feelings by playing Beat Saber on
Uh,
the
yeah.
thing.
I know that's one
And
of her favorites.
yeah, it's like all she plays, and she will go to town on it. And I'm like, yeah, good for you. Just
Yeah.
sublimate it, I guess, to use the isn't that the term? Would that be sublimation?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking actually when I was in LA about Twitch and people play games constantly on Twitch and how maybe Grace could have a Twitch where she just plays Beat Saber, but
Yeah,
all you see
it's just
is
her.
her playing it.
Yeah. You don't ever see what the game is, just
No,
her, because
just
you can't look cool during it. It's the best.
I think that would be very popular. I think, 4 hours at a time of
Yeah.
just Grace going
Yep.
mad on Beat Saber.
Dead
Yeah.
silent. Doesn't talk to the audience. Yeah. She I'll come into the house and she won't hear me because she'll have the headphones in and she'll be doing that thing and I'll laugh because it looks so goofy. But then when she takes it off, it's like she's just like pouring sweat. She's like, okay, I did it. I'm like, all right, yeah, you got it. Good for you.
Very well. But the Vectrex, was not as advanced as the Oculus, but it was good. My favorite game was Fortress of Narzod. What a game.
Are you just making these things up?
I
Is this
know.
from the 60s? What is this? Vet Trex?
The Vectrex, because it was vector graphics. So it was called the Vectrex. I know it was the first console that came in a little TV. It was a TV and a little remote control, like joystick that came out of the television. It was
Vec
very cool.
Trex. I'm gonna have
Vectrex.
to look this up because I have
Yeah.
never heard of this in my there it is. That is definitely in its
Yeah.
own console. Oh,
The
that is
reason
rough looking.
and the reason why very few people know about it is because you know what? I'm a fountain of knowledge. We've talked about Goose and
Yeah.
now we're on to Vectrex. Um,
Yeah.
but
That's
it
fine by me.
Yeah. Um, it was only really around for 2 years. It came out, I think, well, all of those games consoles, there was a real, the technology kept advancing, and for whatever reason, it got caught in this in between world, and so it had 2 years where it was. A games console, but it wasn't like the Commodore or the Spectrum or anything like that. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised that it got to Northern Ireland and my brother was able to get one. He never let me play it, but if he ever left the house, I would sneak into the room and I
Yeah.
would play Fortress of Narzod.
Is was this is all pre-Atari. Like this is like
Yeah, 1982, 1983. So I don't
okay,
I don't
yeah.
know when Atari was.
I think Atari is like that's what revolution. I could be wrong. I'm not a gamer. I shouldn't speak on it. But
Oh,
that
yeah.
sound I in the 90s there was a system called the Panasonic 3DO that no one seems to remember very
Yeah,
often.
I don't know if that
Um,
rings a bell.
and that and Sega Game Gear were pretty big. Sega Game Gear was like trying to compete with Nintendo's Game Boy, and it was color, and so we thought that was cooler. But yeah, those games are pretty. And do you remember? Did you ever play Nintendo Virtua Boy?
No, no. See, I'm older than you, so I think
Virtual Boy.
that was kind of newer tech. I was Spectrum and Commodore and Vectrex, which Vectrex was color if you put a color screen on it. It was
Well, of
black and white,
course.
but you could get these like strangely colored screens to put on top of it.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Like monochrome, like one color at a time type of deal, like a
Yeah,
filter.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if it was on a one screen kind of sandbox game, I think the transparent thing you put on would have different colors, so it would look
Cool.
like you were in a forest or something like that, you know. But I guess that was for me a transitional object. See, I'm trying to bring it back there,
There
but
you go.
is it you know, the emotional weight of the dog, then I was able to somehow then go from there to the Vectrex, and I got very into gaming. And you know, I lost myself in that like a lot of boys do. I spent hours just playing computer games
Yeah.
as a way of, I guess, binding my anxiety at life and kind of dealing with or not dealing with the difficulty of the other's desire and other people. So yeah, I find myself in the world of from the pets to the world of computer games.
Yeah, the transition from pre and post Goose was pretty wild timing wise because we didn't plan it this way. But the previous week, Grace did like her first live performance uh, in forever at like UCB, which was really great. And then she kind of ripped off that band aid. And then it just so happened that I had signed up to do a show the following week, not knowing that Friday would be Goose's last time and or last day. And so then it was like, okay, I guess I'll go do this show, even though like I'm sad and Grace is just devastated and then you're in town. So it was like, okay, well, you know, we're gonna hang out a lot more, obviously. But it was interesting to go from that to that and go, oh, this is like the first time it was like that difference of going like, oh, life was so different 72 hours ago, and now I'm like going to do like a little performance again and like going out, and it's like, oh, this is all of a sudden just different. It's very jarring, and then combined, but it was nice because it made me go like, oh, I like performing still, that's fun, which got me excited for Belfast.
Yeah,
So that all worked out, but
yeah,
it also made me go like, oh, I'm gonna like there was an inspiration that happened. Joe Barretto was mentioning the same thing. It was like, it seems like you know, you getting it back, getting the fire or whatever. And I was like, maybe we'll see. But a lot of it is, I think, folk like sublimating the weirdness that's going on, not just with me, but just in our house in general. Going like, here's some structure. This gives me a little bit of structure while we're both readjusting, I guess.
yeah. And it's good to see that both of you are kind of like, you know, doing live stuff again. I'm the same, like, see, COVID killed off so much of that. For most of the
Yeah.
people I know in my world who were doing public speaking and touring, COVID, it stopped and it never got going again. And it seems like it was similar
Yep.
for you. And funnily enough, in LA, I did just a hangout, but I did ended up doing a small talk,
Mm-hmm.
which you were there
Great.
at this bar in downtown LA. So you were doing something live, Grace was doing
Yeah.
something live, I was doing something live. So maybe we're getting back on the horse on that.
Finally.
Uh,
Yeah, because I remember like I think my stand up I got really discouraged with a couple years ago when it was like right when everything was opening up again and people weren't quite coming out to the shows,
Mm,
which had an effect on my like confidence, but then also I didn't like the material I was writing, and so that was a big part of it. And now it's like after the past year and a half, I think there's a certain amount of everyone just going like, whatever, like let's have fun. This is going to be like a cool experience, I think. And there's plenty to talk about now. So I think that'll
yeah.
be really good. I don't know how much I'll talk about pets, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, I'd be interested in this. We might do a whole episode on this, maybe next the next one we do. I don't want to say next week, but yeah, but in terms of the writing, like what kind of stuff now you're getting back to doing that? Like, is there certain themes you want to write about? In fact, a lot has happened to you, particularly Grace, but you as a couple as well in the last couple of years. Like, is that stuff you want to
Mhm.
write about and find a way to put
Yep.
into comedy or what?
Yep. All fun stories. I like doing the storytelling stuff. I've been looking at other comedians and going like, oh yeah, this is the style that I like, and doing different stories and talking about the past, talking about awkward things as a kid, talking about awkward things as an adult, and talking about awkward things when your wife is getting sick and when you're having to readjust your life plans on like a day's notice because all of your plans for the future change immediately due to a diagnosis that you had no idea about, and the timing of everything being like, okay, this is what life is now. There's plenty, I think, to mine there. I think it'll
Yes.
be a
Yeah.
lot
There's a
to have
lot.
fun with, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of themes about like the kind of trifecta of going like, this doesn't have to be super polished. It's an experimental thing, but we can doctor it up. There's also the caretaking element of my life for the past year or whatever, but I also don't want to talk about her experience. At the same time, I think it's really funny to act like I'm the one who is the victim of the whole
Yes.
thing. And so I like being like I was talking about being like just making myself out to be an asshole is always funny to me in my mind.
Yes.
And so I
Yes.
think it's funny to say little aside things that hint that I'm an
And you
asshole.
do it so well.
And it's almost like it's not, yeah, there's got to be some truth in it, but it'll be very fun, I think. And so hopefully it's not too dark that it slaps people across the face, but Belfast seems like a place where they can take some dark humor. I
Well,
could be
yeah,
wrong.
yeah. I mean, when I moved to America, one of the challenges I had was trying to adjust my humor to be less dark and less cutting because you just our humor is not just dark, but it is, you want to make your friends cry. Like you
Yeah.
want to find a way to say something funny that so hits the core of who they are that a part of their soul dies.
Yeah.
And when I went
Yeah.
to America, I realized that in some parts of America, I think maybe with the Irish influence, that's allowed, but definitely in some parts, it's too much, you know?
Yeah. Is this why Dublin didn't want to hang out with you guys? Like, is this why Dublin and Belfast don't get along because Belfast is too mean and Dublin is too nice? Or is
Oh,
it all
have
of
you been
Ireland?
doing research? Have you can now you
Oh,
know
is
the
that right?
cities, you know that Dublin and Belfast and
That's,
the
I'm assuming, the
troubles.
only two cities. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, the southern humor is pretty dark as well, I gotta say. Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Across the board then. Well, it'll be very exciting. But are you going to get a pet? Speaking of, like, getting back to the topic at hand, Pete, are
You
you
know,
interested?
here the funny thing is, and this will say something weird about me that I'll talk to my psychoanalyst about maybe, but like I love animals and I
You do?
love dogs, yeah.
That's
But I
good.
would never ever think about getting one.
Hmm.
Why is that? I don't know why. Like now I don't live in a way that's conducive to having a pet. And yeah, but still, it's kind of interesting why, like, but whenever I go round to someone else's house and they've got a dog, I'm go to the dog first. I'll hang out with the
Oh,
dog. And when
sure.
I was in LA, I was staying with my friend Anna, and she had two dogs, and
Right.
I love those two dogs. They're amazing.
Right.
But yeah, no, if I had a house that had a garden and I wasn't renting and always moving place to place, then maybe. What about you? Are you going to get have you even talked about it, or has it been talked about yet? Is it just quietly being percolated?
Yeah, we joked about it,
Hmm.
but no, I think we'll take a break for a second.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, but I have my, you know, my sights set on some ideas, but it'll be a while because the commitment of it, I think, is a little much at this time. And I feel
Yeah.
like there's been so much energy poured into Goose that we need to find our own tempo before we bring another furry creature back into the mix. But do
And
you
how
think that
much does
even
it
if
cost every time you bring that dog to the vet? Because I know Goose went to the vet a fair amount. I mean, like That's not cheap, is it?
500, yeah, hundreds of dollars. So
Every
expensive.
time, just every
Yeah.
time, just yeah.
The x-rays that she got done were everything. That's when kind of we're like, oh, this is, I think it came to like 900, and then I think it came to 1200 something. Like it just goes up every time. And I
Mm.
remember like being in working at animal hospitals, and I remember a lot of the prices of things
Mhm.
that you're not gonna believe this, Pete. They're not the same prices anymore. It's,
Yeah.
I don't know if you looked around, but prices of things are so high. Uh,
Yes.
and it was like not $100 for a fecal test at one point, and I was like, I was like, when I was doing it was $27 for a fecal exam
Yeah.
to find parasites, and it's so like I had to bring in her turds to the vet, and so like I'm driving and I'm handing them poop, and they're like, we're gonna take the poop and now give us $100. And I was like, that's very funny. That's a funny thing
That's
to do to
crazy.
somebody.
You used to do that just because you enjoyed it. You would,
Yeah, I just
yeah,
like doing it, and I like
yeah.
her poop. Especially when it was all, different
Well, here,
fun textures.
when I was
Sorry,
in LA last when I, when
gross.
I was in LA last week, I was so I was staying in Malibu, and I would go out for a morning coffee. And now this is Malibu, which is just ridiculously expensive. I'd go out, have my morning coffee and an orange juice, and there was this place that did little shots, and I would get a couple of those little kind of health shots, and it would be like $40. And I was like,
Yeah,
what just happened? What
yeah.
just happened?
Did I just get robbed?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's kind of mad.
it is wild. But do you think even if you had a house and a yard, do you think that you would, or do you kind of like not having the commitment and being able to enjoy other dogs?
I have this pathological, uh, I don't know, it's this
I
kind of
like how
like
your
I
legs started shaking too. You started
did you
doing that
notice my leg
nervous.
was shaking? Yeah. Um, I don't need I have this kind of thing where I don't really think I need anything to love me. With maybe hopefully the exception of a few people, maybe.
You really
But
buried the best part of this podcast at the middle.
yeah, so I just because I think sometimes, like a pet gives you all of this seeming love,
Yeah.
but it's very nice, but I don't it doesn't do anything for me.
Doesn't
So
do
yeah.
anything, and is in doesn't do anything like get that away from me, or doesn't do anything is in like not the dog get away from you, but the unconditional love and the dog waiting on you to come home every day to look you on the face and say like, oh, you're my favorite. That doesn't do anything for
No, I mean, weirdly, it does a bit like whenever I go out to a friend's house and I see their dog and their dog's all happy to
me.
see me. I really like that, but I never walk away going, "Oh, I want that in my life."
Yeah.
For whatever reason. So yeah, but because it is lovely. It's lovely whenever there's this little dog running around thinking you're the
Hmm.
best and all of that.
It
Um,
is a lot though.
yeah, yeah. But Goose seemed very chill. Goose didn't seem like the most kind of would Goose go crazy whenever you came into the house and run up and jump up and down on you? I mean, Goose
She
seemed
would,
largely
no, yeah, she'd kind of just be like, hey, she'd like her
almost
tail would
more like a
wag.
cat.
Yeah, she's a lot like a cat most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's like a cat. She'd be on her perch. She's an incredibly smart dog, and she was very expressive with her face and very like friendly to us and not friendly to other people. And so it was like a club a lot. But who knows how much of that, obviously you project and whatnot. But she was just like so smart, but like also just very reactive. So it was a
Mhm.
catch 22. Like for other dogs that I've had before, the inconveniences that Goose had none of was pretty wild. Like she was there was parts of her that were incredibly easy. Just the difficult parts were difficult. So
Yeah. And as you said earlier, and this is key, like it is, and this is very true of humans, but what makes someone lovable is their imperfections. There's an idea that you actually can't love something that's perfect. That and even whenever you look at somebody like there was who was it? Was it Claudia Schiffer or whatever who had a mole on her face? It was a
yeah.
supermodel and it was
Celine Dion,
actually
or
what's
not
that?
Celine Dion, Cindy Crawford.
Cindy Crawford. Oh yeah. And it's kind of like the imperfection that was actually kind of what added to the beauty, that
Yep.
that pure perfection. There's something kind of awe-inspiring about it, but what you end up loving in a person is precisely their symptoms, their idiosyncratic dimensions. They're also the things that drive you most mad.
Mm.
But there were it's what makes the individual, and um, it's there's a the idea of we've talked about it before, I'm sure, but something I used to say when I would speak is I was often a very fast speaker, and I would go off in lots of different directions. And I used the example of people saying to me, which was true, like if you slowed down and stayed on one point, you'd be a really good speaker. And I would say, well, the problem there is if I did that, you'd realize I'm not a good speaker. But as long as I'm fast and I go off in all these directions, at least you have the fantasy that I could be a good speaker if I did
Yeah.
those things, right? So in a similar way, it's the imperfection that generates a fantasy of, oh, if only X, if only the person their nose was a little bit different or whatever, then they'd be perfect. But actually, it's that little imperfection that one generates the fantasy of perfection, but also makes them interesting. So, when you're saying about Goose, what makes Goose singular and never repeatable is precisely
Yeah.
Goose's symptoms. The fact that, you would say to me when I was petting Goose, like, okay, just if you move your hand 1 inch to the right, you might lose it. So just
Hmm.
stay right where you are. It's like, okay, it was the that those dimensions of Goose that I guess is again what you will remember, and what ultimately makes it not just liking a dog or whatever, but actually loving the dog.
I remember when we were first starting to date, and I have found in my life that the sound is a pretty universally enjoyed sound by dogs.
Yeah.
And I was told very quickly that that is not the case with Goose, that she gets very triggered with that sound. And
Because
I
yes, you would
then,
always tell me not to do it. Because I
yes,
was
because
always about to do
yeah,
it, and you'd go, "Don't,
don't do
don't
it.
make that sound."
Because I forgot and I did it once and she lost her mind and it was like Stegosaurus, like I'm gonna kill you. And I was like, whoa, 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 this
Well,
is
that's like one of those movies where they brainwash a person with a trigger
it
word,
is,
and when
yeah,
you
it's
say the
like
trigger word,
MK Ultra.
yeah, oh, that's yeah, and they'll assassinate the president. So like that was Goose's trigger word.
Yeah, like she was a Manchurian candidate. Yeah, and
Yeah,
she so God knows what happened to her when she was a puppy, but something happened.
yeah.
Because I've never seen a dog that was like, oh, I'm gonna kill you if you make that sound.
Wow. I always
But
wanted
she,
to make the sound. Like the more you told me
I
not
know.
to make it, the more like if you went to the bathroom, I'd like, okay, this is my chance. This is my
Hmm.
opportunity. But then
Yeah.
you would come back potentially to a
Okay.
bloodied room.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't do it. I peeked out. Yeah,
Uh,
I love her.
yeah.
Wonderful dog. She's a beautiful dog, and we love her for her differences, not because of the way she was similar to all of the other dogs. I think that's a great point, Pete.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think any of us, when we think about what we love about a person, yeah, it is that individual element. And even if it's the individual element that is like an imperfection, the weird way they can't say a word, or
Hmm.
they stammer at a certain point, or uh that kind of embarrassing thing that they do, that becomes, as I say, whenever you lose them, that becomes the thing. Because and I think it's because in humans, um it's that's as in psychoanalysis, the idea that's the side of truth. It's the thing that you do. You've got your kind of Photoshop version of yourself, and you've got the way you present yourself to the world. But when a slip happens, whenever the symptom erupts, there's something about who you really are. Like that's the truth, in a sense, speaks in the moment when you most say, "Oh, that isn't me." That's kind of
Hmm.
what most is you. And when you love someone, it's that it's that moment, is that eruption of something unconscious that is most them. So
I don't think this is a great example of what you're talking about, but I noticed one time that uh, Grace will not use the word with. I think it's like I don't know if it's a Jersey thing or a Philadelphia thing. But it's like should be like, "Are you done your sandwich?" But she's not like, "Are you done with
yeah.
your sandwich?"
Oh yeah.
And she
Oh
never
yeah.
knew she didn't use the word with, or like a what would that be? Contraction. What would that be? Linking verb. We'll get
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But I always thought that was very funny. But it's
Yeah.
also like a cultural thing. I'm like, oh yeah, you just done your sandwich.
Yeah. No, that's a great example. That's like this little thing that the person isn't
Yeah,
even aware of that is grammatically incorrect, that, yeah. And that's
just
the funny
drop it.
thing.
Yeah, just drop the word. I was like, oh, you can just drop words. Okay, crazy.
Just delete them. Yeah. And that can also be whenever a relationship is, in a place of crisis, that becomes the thing that really annoys you, right? That's
Yeah,
the thing that
haven't
it's
gotten
so
there yet.
lovable about the person was, also the thing of if you drop that word one more time, I'm
With
gonna.
am I done with the sandwich? That becomes the thing I snap about.
Yeah, Todd McGowan talks about that where he said, it's kind of true is that sometimes you can tell when someone's going to break up, often before they do. There's actually algorithms that supposedly can tell 3 years before a person knows they're going to
Nice.
divorce, through their buying habits and that kind of stuff. But anyway, but one of the ways you can kind of tell is whenever a couple of things. One is they're no longer drawn by the symptom. They're no longer find the symptomatic little eruptions kind of cute and beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
but they find them annoying. That's not a really good sign. And secondly, that they don't find any sense of mystery in the other. They think they can know exactly what the other's going to do, how they're going to respond. They've lost touch with the enigmatic dimension, the black box, the dusting of the other. And those are two kind of like bad signs, and
Yeah.
that the people can turn around. It was also Freud once said, I remember in one of his introductory lectures of psychoanalysis, he there's a throwaway comment where he said he met a woman on the street. He was about to get married, and she said the wrong name of the person she was marrying. I can't remember who she said. And then Freud just in a kind of comment said, "Oh, like that's not going to last."
Yeah.
And then I think he said, and it didn't. But there are little things that can sometimes get hints. But one of them is when those symptoms and those little unique singular things no longer uh, draw out your desire, but rather your annoyance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like an indifference would be bad too. I mean, I guess that's fine if it's something
Yeah.
you're just used to, but there that the eye rolling or the not caring or the apathy, the
Mm.
stonewalling, I've heard that one's a big one. And yeah, but I think you can tell. I mean, I always feel like I can tell when I see other couples, but I don't know how much of that is me just making stuff up. But there are certain things where it's like, oh, you guys aren't, you guys like each other? Like, you guys aren't getting, you guys
Yeah.
seem like this is like you both aren't looking, I notice sometimes when couples never look at each other when they're out with anyone else or someone else, like they just kind of look elsewhere. Like they're like you could pretend like if you covered one of them up, the other one's behavior wouldn't change at all. Like their body part, like they aren't
Oh yeah.
aware that the other person is next to them. That's always fun.
No, yeah, yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, well, I mean, relationships are tough and really difficult, and so
Who
we all go
knows?
through difficult times. So I hope people aren't listening to us and going, "Oh crap, I'm doing all of those things," because
No.
sometimes we just have moments where things aren't good, but there are
And also,
also
I rarely
signs.
know what I'm talking about. So, just a fun fact.
Fun
Uh,
fact. Yeah.
well,
Well, have we got is this has been a very just chill one about fetish objects, transitional objects we've touched on, the symptom. I suppose there's some content to it. Have you got any
I like it.
takeaways or thoughts?
Well, I have another aside, Pete,
Ooh, yes.
and this is more of a recommendation, and we're jumping all over the place. And thank you everyone for joining us back again on Fundamentalists. Please tell your friends about
For
it.
season
Uh,
20, yes.
season 20. And oh, my pal Kevin recommended a show that Grace and I started watching last night that I would be really curious to get your opinion on. But I
Ooh.
know it's hard to get people to watch television shows by themselves.
Is this going to
And
be Dear Reindeer?
it is, it's
Ah, yeah,
exactly
I
what it
knew
is.
it because
Baby
that's the one.
reindeer.
It's what's it called?
Baby
Oh,
reindeer.
sorry,
Yeah.
Baby Reindeer. And the reason why I guessed that is because, well, there's so few good things that that's the only series that I've heard in the last couple of years, really, that's good. I hear people say, "Oh, this is good" or "That's good," but people who I respect, and even you, have said that Baby Reindeer is good. So I will watch it. I watched 2 minutes of it, and I find it very good and very difficult to watch in the
Yes.
best possible way. And the other recommendation, so I will watch that and we can talk about it. And have you watched, because I've had a few people say you have to watch this.
Can I guess?
Yes.
Three body problem.
No.
Mm.
Oh, I don't even, I've seen that all talked about, but I don't know so much about that.
Madam Web.
That's right. That's the
Okay.
one.
Good. No,
I
which
got
one?
I got too involved in watching all of the reviews of Madam Web. I've never seen the
Okay.
movie, but the reviews, and I've done the same with Rebel Moon. I've never watched Rebel Moon, but the reviews of it are hilarious because
Really?
everybody thinks it's terrible. Like there's nobody thinks, especially Rebel Moon 2 and all of these, and it's just quite enjoyable. I've never watched it. I never will, but I've watched about 20 reviews of both
Excellent.
Madam Web and Rebel Moon 2.
That's great.
The film is Poor Things.
Oh, yes, incredible. I've seen it.
You've seen it. Okay.
Yeah,
And
that
I don't even.
blew me away. Yeah.
Do you? Okay, because I haven't even seen it. I don't know anything about it. Maybe you've recommended it as well.
Yeah.
But I've had two people this week who have messaged me and and they never do this, and messaged me and gone, watch this movie. And
Yeah.
Baby Reindeer is the other one. So,
Yeah. Poor Things was for me wildly difficult to watch, and I don't know how much this is like my own prudishness, but there are definitely like moments where I was like, I don't think I'm allowed to be watching this. Like, I don't think this should, I expected my parents to appear and throw
Mhm.
like a blanket over my head the whole time. But in terms of every single aspect of that movie, I think it's one of the better things I've seen in a very, very long time in terms of acting, writing, the like visually, it is unbelievable. Yeah, you definitely, and thematically for you, I think you'll be very fascinated by it.
Okay, yeah, I got to check. I don't even know what's it about, or can you say?
It
Is it
is
better
like a
for me to?
very it's like about a scientist who is kind of like doing some kind of Dr. Frankenstein type stuff. Um, and I don't want to say any
Okay,
more than that. Yeah, but it's
perfect.
very, I think that's is I don't think that spoils anything, but it takes quite a many turn. And Mark Ruffalo is great in it. Um, and it's about like in terms of if you're interested in like the developmental ideas of someone kind of, you kind of go through that pre-subjectivity thing. I think you kind of watch someone kind of become a person, which is an interesting part of it.
Oh, cool. No, I have just weirdly watch hardly any TV. I watch loads of YouTube. It's not that I don't watch
Yeah.
stuff. I watch loads of YouTube, but I just watch very little television.
There's
But
something
those,
about YouTube, about clicking on a podcast like this or an interview or something that I find myself gravitating toward way more than I find myself gravitating toward like Netflix or something.
I know, and it's all free. All of this content's free, and yeah, I will so gravitate to. I'll gravitate to a podcast on something that I have no
Mm-hmm.
seeming interest or background in, and just listen to it because you two people talking about an interesting subject is just I
Yeah.
love it, absolutely love it. No.
One day we'll get there.
Yes. Yeah,
Pets,
absolutely.
no one can relate to that. Thank you, everyone. And any takeaway, Pete, for
No, but I kind of feel like actually it was really, I mean, man, I'm sorry that Goose went and
thank you.
it's yeah, and I think it was interesting to kind of like reflect on how animals can be these transitionary objects and how they can hold so much emotional freight for us. And so yeah, so that was all very interesting. And yeah, but no big takeaway. Have you got any big
Yeah.
takeaway?
No, I think it'll be great. I think people should definitely come to Belfast,
Yeah.
and definitely come see me work out some material that will be very, very good. And see some stuff that Pete's doing with the rest of it, not different panels or whatever. Or panels probably not the right word.
Yeah, we'll have a good few panels and yeah,
Yeah.
and
And please
musicians and
subscribe to this podcast, folks, because we'll be at least more regular now because the season just started, so we don't have a choice.
brilliant.
Perfect.
All right. Take care,
All right.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.